This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. You're welcome along now to the Maroon and White pod. We had to leave it a few days after Sunday just to gather our thoughts after what was a disappointing day for Galway football in Croke Park last Sunday, where Meath just edged Galway out 216 to 215 in the All-Ireland quarter-final, which brings an end to Galway's season, and Meath go on to the All-Ireland semi-final to play Donegal, Kerry play Tyrone, and the Galway senior footballers season is now over. I'm joined by Alan Flynn and Stephen O'Meara to look back on the game. First of all, Alan, disappointing day on Sunday in Croker.
Yeah, very disappointing for everyone. Never really kind of, opened up and played maybe to the level that we know they can. And I think, to be fair, Meath were, even though there was only a point in it in the end, they were full value for their win. They played the better football over the 70 plus minutes, and just disappointing just to see, I suppose, to go out at that point and probably knowing that there's certainly a lot more in the team,
It was the big thing, Alan, wasn't it? We were there last year and I was hopeful to get back there this year again, but to have the 2 week break after the 3 weeks under trot,
Yeah.
you would have thought Galway could have regathered and got a few knocks and bruises, finished up and got players back closer to full fitness. So there was that hope to just get by the weekend, but unfortunately,
I think so. I think that's a huge thing, because to play 3 weeks in a row. I think the one I was thinking about this a little bit. One of the things that I think has been highlighted over the last couple of years, obviously that system is going away, but to come, to not top your group and end up having to play 3 weeks in a row potentially, considering getting through the preliminary quarter-final, and so, like, it's a lot to ask, and you could see that a lot, even if you think, say, you look at the Donegal game and how flat they were in the first half. I do think that was a part of it. Galway end up being a point up. They were flat. Like, they probably played for 10, 12 minutes. Maximum of 20. It was 3-3 after 15 minutes, 7-6 at half time. The third quarter, like, really made the game a chase for Galway, and so they were stuttering, really. We all probably felt that, after getting the 2-3 on around the 50th minute or so, that they'd kick on, and as you said then, that they would kind of get a win, get out of there, and get 2 weeks to get themselves right and really have a cut at the semi-final then, but they obviously, and this is a credit to Meath as well for, kind of they showed a huge resilience there and a confidence in themselves as well to be able to overcome that double blow, like to concede 2 goals in 4 minutes, and to be the underdog. They haven't been in the situation for a long time, and to have the confidence to get through that. I suppose, in fairness, mark them out to be a team that has a lot of potential. I don't know, will they go all the way? But they're certainly doing a lot of good things, and they're building a confidence, and they won't be easily bet in the semi-final either, I think.
Stephen, you're obviously always looking on here at various teams and their challengers. Like, before this game, people would have thought Galway, just with more experience at this level, that they were going to have enough to beat Meath at the weekend.
Yeah, I suppose obviously Galway podcast from a Meath perspective, and I coached in Meath for a year, and as the River Darver flowed a few miles further south, I'd be the other side of the river. I've been saying it for 4 or 5 years as I coached with Meath. I believe that then have been proven. I think Meath I don't believe there's a team in Ulster has better footballers than Meath, or has had for the last 5 years. I think tactically they've been stuck in a time warp, the last of the Mohicans. Even Kieran Donaghy alluded to that last year when, there was a kind of disparaging question asked about Armagh's style. He said, look, everybody's saying the same style except Meath. So, like, there's crack of footballers in Meath, and I suppose I'm talking, if you take out the likes of, Sullivan is gone there, like one of the most effective forwards in the country. So you got a caveat that Meath are much better than people think. I suppose with a bit of revisionism now, or 1/3 revisionism, like they'd beaten Dublin and Kerry coming in. Like I would have said 2-3 years ago, I see a natural Dublin Kerry Galway monopoly for the next number of years. They've now beaten all three. So the first thing I'd say is I think I saw Jordan Morrissey, isn't it?
Morris, yeah.
Jordan Morris, he's the Carlow man, Jordan Morris. Like I saw him in the flesh in a Sigerson game this year, and I was blown away by how far ahead of the average standard he was. Like he just looked a class apart, and they're all inter-county footballers playing Sigerson Cup. So caveat, Meath are good. And if they would be what I would have seen as the three main contenders. Obviously from a Galway point of view, yeah, it's I see 7-2 or 5-2. I had a couple of quid on Meath anyway. I thought the odds were wrong, I suppose. I start by saying that. I don't think it's disastrous from a Galway point of view. You know, you're out in the quarter final. But I don't think the odds were stacked that far. As a caveat, I don't think the odds were justifiably stacked as far as I think they should have been. I suppose that's the first point I'd make, you know.
Are you surprised though, Stephen, when you look on at games and usually Galway's on the ball, they're so good, they're very good at keeping the ball, but to concede 2-7 off turnovers.
Yeah, look, firstly, Pádraig Joyce alluded to this. I'd say I would disagree with Pádraig Joyce on a lot of things, but one point he did make that I would always make, there's only three places the score can come from. To throw in, a kick out, or a turnover. Like, when I look at scores off turnovers, I would classify turnovers which you could defend from and turnovers which you can't defend from. You know, so I would caveat that. I think Pádraig Joyce made a fairly sharp point of that to an RTE interviewer 2 or 3 years ago. I suppose the issue, and I suppose maybe to look at an analytical point of view, the big one is, I mean, look, let me just have a look. I mean, yeah, they've got shots off on 65%. So on the scheme of things, they haven't been turned over massively more than the average. The big issue here is, and I suppose I don't want to go too much down the new rules, but obviously there's new concepts and whatnot. There's been less high turnovers in the new game than there were. Now, if I was in charge of new rules, I'd be trying to make new rules where there'd be more high turnovers. You know, the average turnover per game in the old game was 2.5 at the top level of inter-county. That's gone down to 1 or less than 1.5. I haven't taken a full calculation, just look at the games. Like this Meath game, Meath made a number of those turnovers high in the Galway half, and vice versa. It must be pointed out there was a lot more high turnovers, especially in that third quarter, as you pointed out. So the key issue, I suppose, it comes on to the key point from where I'm at from an analytics point of view, is, you know, they've been turned over for a goal in their own full back line / half back line against Dublin and against Meath, and ultimately it was the losing. So it was the losing of the Dublin game in the sense they lost by a point and they conceded a goal off that. It was the losing of the Meath game because they had the game turned, got a kick out the corner back, got turned over there and then, and it ended up with an open goal. So yeah, in that regard, for me, if we're looking at the detail, there's 2 points here. The first one is a simple one. They've been turned over, you know, against the two top teams they've played in recent weeks. Dublin, well, obviously Armagh, the top team, and I'll have to have a quick look over stats there, but they've given away essentially an open goal or a 1-on-1 goal off being turned over on their own short kick out in the full back line. And that leads on to bigger stats. And I suppose, as I said on the Square D yesterday, you'd need to be an actuary. I think every Gaelic football team now needs an actuary on board. The joke and laughing is I'm going straight to heaven when I die because I'm rallying against elements of the rules, but I'm actually the guy with the mathematical software that can actually get the gains. I can assure you it's for the want of a better game. I'm rallying against some of the rules. But the key piece of actuary here is, in short, and we can go into it if you want, you know, Kerry are getting hands of ball in the full back line and they're getting more value than they did in the old rules. Galway, just to read you a stat here, and this is this is and I'm not saying this with a tut, no more than Alan, I'm in a nice position that I'm sitting back studying games and data from league, from championship. I'm trying to speculate how this will how club championship will be comparable to inter-county / club league, and probably won't know till we get a round or two. We could be out of the Derry championship by then. But I'm sitting back looking, I suppose, to give a caveat here that I'm not having a go. When Galway got off 8 short kickouts against Dublin in the league, and they scored 6 points off them. And I don't know if that's 6 out of 8. There could be 2-pointers in there. Little update in the software. But on the whole, it's probably a stat. It's bread and butter for me. I'm kind of still amazed that it's not a bread and butter stat in general in the analytics game. But Galway in 6 games I have on file here. Let me just read out what they are for. I'll read them out in a second. I'll give you the stats. I'll give you what they are after they include the game against Dublin, the game against Meath, obviously, certainly Kerry in the league, Dublin in the league. They've got hands on ball on 27. They've had 27 kickouts to the full back line. They've got hands on ball on 25. They scored 14, which isn't bad, but against the better teams, they haven't. They've conceded 318 on the turnover. Galway have actually made a loss of 0.48 of a point every time they've kicked the ball to the full back line in those 6 games I have. That's a startling figure. Now, I want to make the point. You play Dublin. You look at the data from the previous game, they'd scored 6 from 8. Why would you not bring that into the next game? But ultimately, against Dublin in the championship, they scored 3 and they conceded 1-4 in the turnover. And 1-1, if not 1-2, were high turnovers, which they couldn't defend. Against Meath the last day, they got 6 in the cornerback pocket. They scored 1 point. They conceded 2-1 in the turnover. And I say one of those was a high turnover, open goal. Again, if I was working for Galway, what I'd be looking at now is it on 27 short kickouts and a loss of 0.48 of a point per kick. There's enough data to say there's a problem there. It's not a huge sample size, but their outcome is so huge. There's enough to say this is a problem. Is it? How are we playing out of the back? Where are we playing it from? Maybe it's personnel. I do have one. There's one piece of personnel there sitting in the holding stand. I just can't get my head around. Come on to maybe after. But ultimately, what has cost Galway? Just for comparison, when we look at the 11 kickouts in those games where other teams have got hands on ball against Galway, they've scored 1-6 and conceded 0 on the turnover. So, and that's from 11 or 12, whether you count only wins or wins and losses. Oppositions have made a profit of 0.75 per full backline hands on ball kick out. Galway have made a loss of 0.48. Now, if I saw that data and nothing else, I'd say, well, that's a team who are out of their league. They're not, but the devil is in the detail of how and why is that. It's a phenomenal. It's the lowest figure of any team. That's what I was looking at when I asked for a couple of minutes before the show. It's the lowest figure of any team by a country mile in the top 12 this year, and it's completely disproportionate to the other end. So that, for me, probably a lot of questions rather than answers. Is the solution bang it long down the middle? No, which it often is in hurling. No, because from 106 long kickouts in those games, they've won 52, they've lost 54. Again, counting the first possession and the turnover, if there was one, they scored 258, they've conceded 256. So they've made a profit of 0.02. Ultimately, it would have been better to do that than to have gone short by half a point per kick nearly. But ultimately, is it the solution? No, the solution is to look at why can Galway not get the ball from full back line like Kerry can at will, and score at the far end, not get turned over for scores. That, for me, if I was looking, if I was sitting down now for 2-3 days from a Galway perspective, that's what I'd be looking at, the hows and the whats around that.
Alan, you just mentioned it early on when it was 1-1 there for a while, but early on 11 minutes. Then Meath were up 2-1 on 17 minutes. Not a great half of football by Galway, but they go in 7-6 ahead, and you're sort of thinking at half time, we haven't really played really for the first 35 minutes, and we're in a good position here.
Yeah. I probably was like personally, I was probably thinking, um, but it was very like the first half was very poor,
Yeah.
and it's actually it's amazing, really. I suppose when we talk about um like it's not necessarily just the high scoring in the games that's like for me it's the tempo of it, the pace of the football now that has makes it, I suppose, more entertaining, you know what I mean, because the scoring element is kind of like the cream on the top, but like the pace of the game, um the tempo of the game, whatever you want to call it. But so first of all, it was strange to see that pace so reduced in the first half, between the two teams. Um, in fairness, I think Meath were a lot more dynamic in terms of when they were coming inside the 45, and their ability and even want to take a man on. And I'm sure Stephen will be able to kind of maybe go through this, but um, it looked to me, just that Galway were looking to kind of play, um, happy enough to take their time, work the ball up the field. Um, I suppose if you think about it, a lot of the players are there for the last couple of years, and in fairness, they've had a huge amount of success from playing against blanket defenses, and they were happy to take that on and get their scores that way. Um, but the problem in some ways now, I see it, is that um, that was all fine on the basis that the opposition were ending up having to do the same thing against Galway, let's say, because the opposition were playing the game slowly, working the ball up the field. Galway were very, very well set up, two wing backs tucked in, um, you know, 13, 13 players maybe behind the ball, 12 even, and they had to do the same. But now the opposition are breaking very fast. Sometimes you're not winning your own kickouts, and if their mindset is we're going to take them on, we're going to if we see a one-on-one situation, we're going to have a cut at this. And Jordan Morris was a prime example of this. Like, he doesn't start very well from the point of view of scoring, but he looked dynamic. He looked a scary prospect, even though there was three wides. He's getting the full backing to keep attacking, to keep going at his man. You take Matthew Costello. If Matthew Costello gets the ball from midfield on, he is trying to go past a man. Now, in the new game, you go past someone, straight away, there's gaps. And it just from that point of view, even going in at half time, Paul, I kind of felt, yeah, we're lucky to be a point up. Um, Maybe our experience will pull us through, but we really need to up the tempo. The tempo of our play is too slow. Because when you're playing that kind of a game, you're risking the element of a surprise attack from the opposition, i.e., they getting two or three scores in a row, a goal, throw in a goal, and that's exactly what happened. They get 1-3, 1-4. You'll have it there, Paul, but they get a sizable amount of scores in the third quarter, and Galway now are chasing. Now, to be fair to Galway, they come back roaring into the game and they get the 2-3, and that was the spark. And I suppose at that point, Paul, I probably would have felt, okay, now they've got over the hump, they'll kick in, and now because they've got in front, the game plan actually might start to suit, where they can slow the game down, work their shots, get the frees, get the 2 pointers, and away they go. And as we kind of said at the start, probably get out of there, really. Um, but that's not the way it transpired. But I'd be interested to hear what Stephen has in terms of the numbers, but like just in terms of uh, men willing to take on guys, or even us moving the ball, and kicking the ball it sounds great. Not necessarily always the what we want, but like as Kerry proved the last day, you know they're not necessarily always kicking the ball, but they're moving the ball. It's the tempo of their play. So even if the ball is going through the hands, it's hard to pin a guy down. That as soon as you get on a guy, he's moving it again through the hands. Maybe there's a 20-yard kick pass. There's someone taking the ball. There's someone coming off the shoulder. That tempo of play, um, I just felt, and maybe in fairness, the fact that they were playing 3 weeks in a row, that obviously has a part to play in it. Donegal had the same issue, and a lot of the teams that were on 3 weeks on the bounce looked a little bit jaded in that point of view. So maybe that has a part of it. But I never necessarily felt comfortable, Paul, the last day. I felt we're under pressure here. You know, the turnovers were, any turnovers that seemed the big ones, the ones where the crowd were, it was having an impact on the crowd, seemed to be coming from Meath, you know?
Just on that, moving the ball, I think it was for one of Shane's points in the first half. I think it's Matthew Tierney kicks it in from the sideline. Peter Cook goes up and tries to compete. He doesn't win it, but the Meath defender
Yes.
nearly pams it down. Shane gets it, and it's over the bar. There wasn't enough of that kick pass, and even just to throw one in around the square at stages. Now, at stages, in fairness, Meath did have the Galway full forward line. It seemed to be Shane and Rob in a two-man inside for a lot of it, and they did have them well marshalled, but I didn't feel there was enough of those stages where that happened on Sunday.
Yeah.
If only you had a man with all the data on the show, Paul.
Take it away, Steve. Take it away.
Well, to answer that question, provisionally, obviously, I'm always conscious of cause and effect of these things. You know, I'm looking here. Galway are playing at the set defence 29 times. They've kept it through the hands on 24, and they've hit an aggressive kick in 5 times. And lo and behold, you're correct. They scored 38% through the hands and 60% with the aggressive kick pass. Now, I want to make the point, which probably ties back into where you're at, Alan. You've articulated something very well there, and I have a very numbersy way. So yes, in terms of the times they kept it through the hands into the set defence compared to aggressive balls in, which is generally over 40 yards, or trying to take out a sweeper, which me didn't generally have, so it was 40-yard plus. Yes, they've scored 3 from 5 compared to 9 from 24, 60% compared to 38. So absolutely on the surface, Paul, you would appear to be spot on that. On the whole, those stats tend to flip the other way, even under the new rules. Caveat that. Again, I want to make the point, that doesn't mean they should have kicked everyone in the top. Maybe there was only 5 times where it was the right option and the smart player saw that option. I'm always very careful at making black and white comparisons on those stats, because you can be confused and cause and effect. Probably the biggest error in the analytics game. Again, while I have those stats open in front of me, I suppose intriguingly, Alan, your point, I agree. I mean, based on memory, and again, from a Meath perspective, I think there's a great irony that Colin O'Rourke came in with an idea he was going to kick his way back 30 years of tactical evolution. Didn't work spectacularly, I think it's fair to say. Irony of irony, Robbie Brennan's come in, they're kicking a lot less, but the ones they kick, the stats are through the roof. Aggressive, again, it's aggressive forward kick passes. Galway have whether it's in the transition or in the final phase, they've aggressively kicked 9 times out of 40 through the game. They've scored 3 from 9, 33%. And again, when you have small sample sizes, expected score is actually better, because you could have gone through a goal 3 times and missed them all, but expected score is actually 28%. That aggressive forward kick pass, and I think on the whole, Alan, it was those kind of plays. I think that's a really good point you make, that Galway, and listen, I was involved with Galway as head of analysis at 18 when it evolved that way, and I suppose that would be kind of from my playbook. Certainly something I was recommended from day one based on what I was seeing. It was, the highest, Galway done a 17 years playing that way, so I'm not tutting here by any manner of means. But Meath have had 9 aggressive forward kick passes. They scored 1-3, 67%. Expected score 63. So even taking on the goal, Meath could have missed that goal chance and had 3 from 9, the same as Galway. The expected score is 63% to 48%. So I think you've made the key point there, Alan, that it was when you're playing games of blank. And look, Armagh scored a brilliant goal last year. If they didn't do it, Galway probably would have won that All-Ireland, and history would look very different. But ultimately, yes, the reality here, and maybe this goes back to a question about personnel, and it's probably 4 very athletic players, but they wouldn't be kicking the ball 40 yards. Kicking football in Meath, I would say, after Kerry, Meath possibly have the best kickers of a football in the country. And I say that, having coached up there for a year, like defensive things you do in other counties, there's boys swinging 40-yard passes there at a rate that you're not used to seeing at club level, even mid-range and club teams in Meath. You'd be surprised how well it kicked the ball. It jumped out at me. Though that 1-3 from 9 aggressive forward kick passes at some stage through the play. There was 2 or 3, I certainly remember there was a turnover. And as you say, this isn't we're getting set and you're getting set and we'll be better at it. This was, now ultimately, a small caveat on that. In quick transitions in general, Galway have scored 2-5 from 10. Meath scored 1-5 from 17. It's 100% versus 47%, albeit expected scorers bang on equal 57%. But yeah, Meath's ability when they made that turnover to play those 30-40 yard passes, for me it was very Meath in terms of what they have. I think last year Colin O'Rourke would have had them kicking even if Galway had 15 men behind the ball. This year, it was less than 20% of their attacks were like that, but the ones that were, they were lethal and they worked. And it comes down to, if you want to bring, a high-end coach in Galway says to me, 2 days ago, how many of that back six would you fancy to actually kick a 41-yard shot? The very athletic back six, is it a technically very capable back six? And probably the answer there for them probably wouldn't fancy 41-yard kick passes. I'd say those Meath boys, a lot of them are young bucks and I don't really know that well, but they look like boys that can all kick a ball 40 yards. And maybe, again, slightly ironically, maybe there's less of those in the Galway team now than there was 5 and even 2 years ago. And as I say,
Has John Daly not even in there then?
Well, yeah, I didn't say that to you off air. Like, you boys are the Galway, you know what's going on over there. I don't. Look, I'm 6 years out of Galway. Paul Joyce never asked for the data of the 2 previous years before he came in. I've never spoken to the man. He might recognise me if I met him in Shop Street. I don't know, but I'll give you a 6-year-old piece of data that I retook as a neutral 2 years ago, just to go back. Say, when I was 18, 19, Gareth Bradshaw was a centre-back in 18, a very solid footballing centre-back. On average, or the stat I take, I like to think it's the money ball stat. I don't debate this with people anymore because I know I'm right. I want to say I know I'm right. That's not arrogance, it's mathematics. You can't argue with mathematics. It's the language of fact. If myself and Alan line out a cornerback on the same team, and if over
God help us.
if over 500 phases we score 50% through Alan's hands and we score 20% through my hands, over 500 phases, there's a mathematical point there that Alan's doing something technically or intellectually or athletically that I'm not able to do. Just to give a comparison, Gareth Bradshaw, Galway were scoring 20% less when it went through Gareth Bradshaw's hands compared to not. Now, for a centre-back, that's slightly above average. You've got to bear in mind, you will expect the higher up the field you are, the more you'll score proportion to the rest of the team. So an average figure for a centre-back is between 75 and 80%. I think Bradshaw, 0.75 and 0.8. I think Bradshaw was 0.82. Good, solid footballing centre-back. John Daly has figures I have seen with no other centre-back club or county in the country, and I have a lot of data. Galway were scoring 1.4 times more through John Daly's hands than not. Now, you give me that data, I don't care if I haven't seen the game. That's over 300-400 touches. I did it again on the All-Ireland final and semi-final 2 years ago. The same data came out. Now, one of the reasons I love that is I can tell by John Daly that he's a smart footballer. He's also a technically fantastic kicking football. Bit of an outlier there. Like, I probably exposed him too much on the square D and lost edges as a coach. It's history now, probably, so it doesn't matter. Like, kicking at the blank of the fences have become bad value. Again, when I was in Galway at 18, that was one of the key metrics I put out from the get-go. We had kicked 15 into a blank of the fence against Tyrone and Tuam in the first game. Had scored, we kicked 15 in. 12 had been turned over. 1 ended up as a point. 6-7%. Through the hands, I think we'd scored 60%. I'd had that data from previous teams. Showed it to Brian Sill. Showed it to Kevin Walsh. Next in Galway, stop kicking balls at the blank of the fence. It's one of the reasons the offensive stats went through the roof that year. It mightn't look like per 10 phases the offensive stats went through the roof. The 2 outliers of the Galway football team, you have to be an exceptional footballer to be an outlier in the old game when it came to kicking into blank of defences. I'll give you a guess who the 2 that were still profitable kick a ball at the blank of defences were on the Galway football team. It won't take a rocket scientist to guess the first one.
Conroy,
It's Paul Conroy. Who's the other one? John Daly. Every other footballer on the team was like 95% of footballers in the country. You go kicking it to the blanket defence, it's bad value. Conroy and Daly are the outliers. Galway score 30 to 40. This is off memory. If I'm held to this, it's certainly more than 1.3 more through John Daly's hands than not. I cannot understand. Look, doctors differ and patients die. There's two exceptional coaches in there with Galway. I don't know if they're ahead and an assistant or is they're attacking and defending. I don't know what way they go. How John Daly is not in the Galway football team, it's probably a worse decision than Dessie Farrell taking off Niall Scully on 50-odd minutes against Galway last year, which was the greatest gift that Galway football ever got, to take a player of that statistical value off the field and replace him with a rookie. I'm looking at a football team there who have the standout problematic figures playing the ball from the full back line up the field and not being turned over and scored on, and the player with the best stats in the Galway football team from 2 to 12 over my time is sitting in the Hogan stand. I'd love to know what the thinking is there. As I say, doctors differ and patients die. Maybe there's a plan of overrunning teams, but the problem is Galway are trying to run out of the back and they've been turned over for two key goals that have ultimately cost them the championship. One against Dublin, one against Meath. That could be random, but the figures here aren't random. I don't know, is there a backstory or is it just out of favour? If I was picking a national 15, John Daly was my centre back. And I can't fathom how he's not in the Galway team. Maybe there's some rationale there. I'm not kicking the dog when it's down here. I've been saying this all year. But I don't know. Am I missing something? Am I being over the top?
No, I think going by the last 2 years, he's just been out of favour because he's been fit enough to tug out. So I don't see
He hasn't been fit enough to tug out.
No, he has been like
He has.
he's still been part of the 26s. Now
Yeah.
he didn't get back this year. I think it was maybe until after the Connacht final, but since then he's been fit enough and he's even come on in a couple of games. So I don't think fitness has been an issue after that. It's just more so
Yeah.
out of favour. I would think anyways from looking on. Even if we're just looking at the game, Alan, you mentioned that third quarter for me, they go 112 to 9 there. Conor Gray gets the goal. Just on that goal for Conor Gray, did Galway need to dive in there when he got the ball along the ground?
No, like I think on reflection, we probably could do a little bit better than that. And even the way it was kind of bundled over, like it was
Mm,
a bit scrappy, really. A bit of a scrappy enough goal. But again, momentum was with them at that point. He
yeah.
was buzzing, like, and in fairness to Gray, I think he had a massive impact when he came in. I didn't realize actually, Paul, how long that guy had been out. I
Yeah,
remember seeing
just
his
on
name,
that, it
and
was actually pneumonia that kept him out.
yeah, like
Yeah,
he hasn't played a huge amount of football. It's amazing, really. Like if you take the last 18 months, I believe, very little football. And I was listening to a couple of things as well post the game, and even last year in the club season, like he was out of form. Let's put it like that. So, he made a big impact. He seemed to kind of know that he had to do something when he came in, and he certainly he made it count. But like in that period, I think they scored 1-6 to go with 2 points.
yeah,
And like, so even just if you just take that period there, like that third quarter is always a very important time in the game. It kind of sets it up then for the final quarter, obviously. If you're going to be kind of chasing or in control, and albeit in control now is a lot different than it was, but they Meath got a right run on it. I think I generally recall that kick out where Gray goes up and takes it down. He uses his body to knock over one of the Galway midfielders. Can't
yeah.
remember who it was. Was it John or
I think it was
whoever?
actually Conroy for that one. Yeah, I
Was it
think.
Paul? Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was a great win. And then he gets the goal Then he gets the next kick out actually, and he breaks it to one of the Meath forwards, and he runs in and gets another point. So they were just on, and it's that momentum piece I think that a lot of people are talking about at the moment on kickouts. And the kickouts are becoming so important in terms of winning the ball. In oftentimes it's nearly easier to win the opposition kickouts because you're driving onto the ball, you're driving onto the brakes, and you're moving forward. So when you're under that cosh, I think um, it can be very. Garma saw this the last day against Kerry. They just and in fairness, they were showing great signs go up to that game and up to that point, but they just literally couldn't get out. Um, so yeah, I think we could have done better on the goal, but I think there's a lot of other things I think that we could have sorted before that, to be honest.
We talked about Liam Sick as well. When he puts us up 2-12 to 112, you're
Mm.
thinking just don't concede a goal, don't concede a 2-pointer, and just the way Galway have, I suppose, under Poirier for the last 2 or 3 years, one thing they have been excellent at is managing games.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what they're saying. I think at that point you're kind of going, okay, they've got a goal ahead. Um, they're kind of going to kind of control the game. At that point, you're kind of thinking all the evidence that up to now over the last couple of years would be that they would control that, they'd see it out, and look after it. But maybe we fell into that kind of place of we're sound now, we're going to get over the line and we're done. But Meath didn't panic, and they still contested everything. They chased everything down. I did think like Hogan in goal. Like there was a couple of kickouts then in the latter stages of the game that like he kicked one over the sideline. We caught one out near the sideline that we were going to get away, but he got a ball out to the corner back, out to that number 4 position when we were in the ascendancy, and it was just too easy to get out that easy. Um, I don't know, did someone switch off, or I couldn't actually see where that guy came from. He seemed to come out of nowhere, but because there seemed to be enough time, and I'd be interested in just maybe going back to that again, just to see from the time the shot was taken to that kick out being taken, and that defender, the cornerback. I think it was actually the cornerback that received the ball. It was a huge opportunity because Hogan in goal was under pressure at the point. He had missed 3 kicks where he had come up the field to take, around the 45 area. He had missed the 3 of them. Um, Galway had got 2 goals. They were on top. Galway had the experience, and next thing he gets this easy option to be able to flick it out to the corner, and Meath get out. And in fairness, the way Meath were playing, Meath weren't going to go sideways or weren't going to start to go backwards. They were on the front foot. That's the way they were programmed to play the game the last day. And they were driving out of defence really quickly. Caulfield at 7 is an absolute flyer. He's only 20 years of age, 21 years of age, I think he was saying on the TV afterwards. And they were bombing out at the half back line. Centre half back, very impressed with him. Um, and then the right half back, what's his name again? Paul
Don't they
Donald
Kieran
Keoghan.
Coffey
Donald
in?
Keoghan.
Yeah, Sean Coffey,
Yeah,
Donald Keoghan
like
and that.
absolutely fantastic player. So that half back line, they really, when Meath were on top and Meath were going well, they were getting a huge platform from that line. Caulfield breaks lines, and he's looking to move the ball forward. And I thought, like, I know it's only a small moment, but that was a huge moment in many ways. I remember, just watching that, and he's getting that cornerback is getting the ball so easily. When Galway were looking like they were getting pressure on Meath and bringing themselves back into the game and putting huge pressure on the Meath keeper, and all of a sudden they get an out. And now in today's game, like kicking a wide, the ball going up to the other opposition's half is it's not the worst thing in the world to kick a wide now, because all of a sudden you have a huge such a better chance now to get the ball back. You think of 12 months ago, 18 months ago, ball can be flicked out to the corner. It was very difficult to, unless you were doing a huge squeeze, and it was very, very structured and very well organized. It was very hard to get a really good, strong press on a team. Now, if you get those few seconds and get yourself organized, it's certainly a lot easier. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, it was funny to come in on 2 points you made there, and I suppose you sort of you made a point then, given the answer I was going to give. Like, I think to be fair to go, we're talking about game managing. You know, it's very hard. Managing games now is not
Yeah.
the same as it was last year. So I think, and again, this isn't a dig at the FRC. It's a new sport. It's not like it's not the sport that it was 12 months ago. You can't game manage like you could 12 months ago. Like I'm seeing club games in Derry are 6 points up with 3 minutes left, and the lads feel they're holding hold. Next thing they banged in 2 goals, or they're 5 points up, they bang over a 2-pointer, and then and a goal. It's happened us twice. We came back out of the woods and won. We drew one. So I wouldn't. I think that's a harsh comparison. It's a lot harder to, and again, the point you make there is the kick out has become so key. Like, and I'm not for a minute suggesting it was an intention. If Jim Gavin wanted to assure that his 5 in a row or Dublin 6 in a row was going to last forever, he's made the rules for it. Because, as you say, Alan, like in the old game, good teams were getting hands on ball and kickouts 85, 95, sometimes 100% of times. That's just not something you can guarantee now. And when you did, if you had to, you went back to the keeper and you played 4v3, and it was very, very hard to do anything about that. Now it's a horse of a completely different colour. Again, a general example. Like I remember 2019, and I was coaching Raheny at the time. Now, the Dubs wouldn't tell you much, but Brian Howard would have mentioned they played Cork in a friendly, and Cork had beaten them, which would have been a notable result of even on a friendly in April 2019. Now Dublin was down with 16 players and Cork had 30. But Cork had played Dublin Super 8s in that year, and people forget Dublin won the game with 14 points. Cork came back to a point on 60 minutes. And again, I was working for Galway that year, so I've accessed all the RTE footage, and you just see Cluxton comes out and he gives a signal. McCaffrey turns around the tee, gives it. They go in a spine, which they hadn't done all season. It was the emergency hands on ball kick out. They go up, they scored a point, went 4-4-4 to kick out, and they scored 3 or 4 goals in the last 10 minutes. And everybody forgot how, like in the new rules, Cork get back there on 60 minutes. They squeeze the kick out. You could be looking at 50% chance. So in that regard, I think game management is more difficult, but equally it's more, and I a vague recollection, I haven't looked at the friendly, it's more unforgivable to let that short one go to the unmarked man at cornerback. It's, it's giving away such an edge, and you've made a key point there. Ball going wide, depending on the dynamics of the game, are they getting off hands on ball? Or if I'm looking at my software live, and well, they are, but they're getting turned over and we're scoring. It was, and look, I don't know, was there something in the psyche there? Like, I'm just saying, like Maurice Brosnan put a tweet up on it last year, and again, it would fly in the face of the analytics. I'd be doing like Kerry did it and Galway did it. Armagh making subs in the second half, and they have 45 seconds to set up. For me, like Armagh get hands on ball in the old rules, they were scoring 50-60% of the time, and you were scoring 10% of the turnover. A hands on ball was half a point. For me to give up a kick out to Armagh on a dead ball when a sub was being made, maybe there's a conservative psyche has come in there. I don't know. Maybe someone switched off, but I agree. Galway get the press there. I mean, that's how Kerry turned the Armagh game. Was on kick out. So it's one to look at forensically, maybe.
Just there, you're mentioning
maybe there's a hardware treatment for a corner forward that switched off. I don't know. But sorry, go on, Paul.
Just there, do you think Daniel O'Flaherty was fouled then in the lead up to the Jordan Morris goal?
Is this the one coming out of corner back?
Coming out, Rory Kinsella tackles him.
No, Morris got a hand. Morrissey got the hand in under the elbow, got the ball, and nothing jumped out at me now. I stand to be corrected, but I'd be my father's son. I'd be quick to point out referee these flaws. Yeah. It's missed from the corner of the sitting room on a Sunday. My dad giving out the ref. I don't remember thinking it should have been a foul, but I'd have to watch back now to say that for certain. But I do remember how did Jordan get the ball out, and he got a brilliant punch from under his elbow, got the ball clean. Unless somebody else, I don't think so.
I think Kinsella kind of comes there and kind of stops him. There was a debate. You could see Flaherty's 2 hands going up, but it is one to be debated.
But there's definitely, Paul, an element at the moment with the refereeing style for a lot of the games. They're obviously all have their own um, s- uh, certain tweaks or nuances that they bring to it. But there's certainly been an element. I felt anyway in the four games where um, the referees seem to be looking to try and let the game flow and let the game go a little bit and not to be blowing the whistle. Like, I just feel that I think there's an element of to get the turnovers and to see teams getting turnovers, there needs to be the teams need to be allowed to make contact and get physical and that if I suppose it's looking for the reaction because you know yourself, Paul. If you're over a team and every time you put your hands near a player, the referee's blowing the whistle and they're getting a solo and go. Well, then there's only one thing you're going to start doing is saying drop off. We're not going near this anymore because we're going in for stuff that we're never going to get, or if we do even get our hands on them, there's going to be free against stuff and we're wide open. So to me, it's very obvious that the refereeing style has become we're gonna we're gonna let this go as much as we can to allow the confidence to come in the team that is tackling to say we can actually get hands on here, we can put pressure on the opposition, and there's a possibility we can actually get the ball back, rather than the game developing into a style where every team just feels that there's no point even trying to go after the opposition inside the opposition half.
Yeah, three. I mean, one. It does irritate me in the GA sometimes, like a decision like that is made behind closed doors, and only people in the right circles know about them. There was a case, one of the county teams I was involved with, and it came back through a friend that refs have been told to let it go a bit more, and we knew that. Did everybody know that? I don't know, but I think you're probably right. I suppose on a slight rules tangent on that point, I suppose one of the things I'm so opposed to when the rules. This comes back to the question you're asking, Paul, and it's happened in one or two, important games. We can be here in 10 years' time with a more entertaining game. I can't accept that games can be won and lost on a 3v4 being called when it wasn't called the other way around. And if you look at Galway Meath there the last day, like it's 10-11 at one stage. And I think I think it's been a drab game. It hasn't been, there's a good with the PR there telling us poor games are good or pointing out the 7 minutes that were exciting. And like 50 minutes of that Galway Meath game was as bad and worse than that we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think the ending papers over a lot of the cracks. Like,
100%. And
Yeah.
I did make the point about the new rules that we'll have drabness punctuated with excitement. I think if you were to pull out 16, 17 minutes of that game and make someone watch the rest, they'd say these new rules have failed. But the point I want to make is I can't accept that now, like a 10-11 that you're getting a 2-pointer for a technical misdemeanor. I just think it's wrong that a team could get 20% of their score on a technical foul like that, or a structural misdemeanor, where it's really worse. There's a high profile game, a bit close to home. One of the backroom teams, I won't say it, but it was called on one team, and 2 minutes later it wasn't called on the other team, and a key championship game was won by a point. I can't accept that. When you go to a guy coming out of the back, a cornerback, like one of the things people throw at me, refs always made a mistake. If I come into contact, right, yeah, I'll be annoyed if I get dragged and lose the ball. But ultimately, I'd be a bit Roy Keane about it. Well, why did you come into contact in your own full back line? Accept what happens after that. And the referee protects you to the absolute letter of the law. Yes, but, again, not to labour the point, I think John Daly probably would have seen that coming and very sort of maybe bring on to a point you were discussing before, very kind of Slough Neil, Mary's Mahara. I think Daly would have seen the danger arced around and there'd be a loop and screen there and you'd be out the gap. That would be my sense, but ultimately whether it was a foul or not, I don't remember what it was. You're taking a man on man from corner back. You're probably asking for a wee bit of trouble.
just one for you, Alan. Do you think the constant changing of goalkeepers, do you think that did upset Galway as the year went on?
To be fair, I don't think it didn't seem to have much of an effect on Connor. the last day, but I think it'd have to be said like it's not a great confidence boost when you're dropped or you're replaced, whatever word you want to use. I thought Connor did quite well the last day, to be fair to the man. Pulled off a couple of great saves, and that's rarely mentioned, by the way. I suppose in the modern game we're always talking about kickouts, but he made a couple of vital saves when we were again under the cosh. Um, there's a lot of talk about he's not able to get the shorts away. Um, he see, and Stephen, I'm sure has all the data on this kind of stuff, but like it's a two-way street when you're taking those. It's the keeper won maybe in some, I don't know what percentage Paul or Stephen will put this in, but the players and their movement and their options that they're giving is just as important. Now the options are a little bit more limited, in my opinion, in terms of going short, particularly against a team maybe that might put four inside 4-4-3 or 4-3-4 out the field in terms of trying to close down that space. But by and large, he got his kickouts into the right positions. It wasn't. I certainly my recollection of the game, Paul. I wasn't kind of going. This is going or this is going away, and it's not going well for Connor. So I thought he did well. He was brought in. As I say, made a couple of good saves. Very composed under any ball that came in around his area. So, but I do feel that like it's probably something that needs to be, you just want to get that confidence for keeper. Keeper needs to feel confident and feel that he is the main one. Um, and the other teams, and that's up to the players as well. Like this is not all on management, and I've been there myself. Like it's players, it's the same for the guys up the field. You make it very easy for the manager when you're going well, and you're going to be in on the team, and you're making it very obvious that you should be on the team sheet. So,
There's been a lot of change at full back as well. Like Sean Fitt's been in and out really this year at full back.
yeah, yeah, but and in fairness to him, he's done quite well. But our full back line, the last day were under savage pressure, Paul,
Yeah, they
and
were.
and I think that's fair to say. Like, the three of them were under pressure, and I've been a huge fan of Johnny McGrath. And as I think most of the county have in terms of the way he goes about his business, but like they have been under pressure, and even in the last couple of games, you think of the a lot of the matches in the group stages, we just didn't seem to have that tightness and solidity that maybe that we've had in previous years. Now again, and Stephen is 100% right. A lot of the stuff that we say here, like the caveat here is that it's all so very new, and a lot of the things that we would have established ourselves as a team were under the old rules, and things now there is more space. There's more opportunities for the Jordan Morrises to take a man on and go at you, and you need to be able to deal with that. And I would say one thing, Paul. I think in terms of the going forward side of it, we do need to unearth um more. It's not a case of replacement in terms of those, we say, Jack and Johnny and Sean, because obviously they have a huge amount of experience now, and they're still very very young, and they have a huge amount to offer. And at the moment they have those places nailed down. But we need more options as full backline players, natural marking full backline players, because that's going to be essential going forward. Like this is not going to go away. This is going to be there, and as the game develops. And as teams get more and more time to be working with the likes of Stephen and lads like that are doing work and giving back feedback on what works and what doesn't, I think the game, you're going to find even more opportunity and more situations where players are willing to take a guy on, because everything is based around the attacking player now, and all the advantages with the attacking player to take a guy on to tackle really really well now and not give away a silly free. um, the advantages with the attacking player. And I think you're going to find more and more of those Jordan Morris type players coming into the game, jinky players taking guys on, um, and looking for scores. And so we're going to need more backup to what's there.
Just on even the comments from Boy Choice after the game, then he said he's obviously not going to make any rash decisions, but his tenure, He's obviously started in 2020. In 2020, they lost the conference final in Pearse Stadium to Mayo. 21, then they lost the conference final again to Mayo. That was in Croke Park during COVID with a reduced capacity. 22, obviously, they go all the way to the final, lose to Kerry. So those were his first 3 years. Then, obviously, in year four, then they lose the preliminary quarter final to Mayo. And then year five and six obviously get to the All Ireland last year, and this was his 6 year in charge of Galway this year, and obviously beaten by Meath in the quarter final. Stephen, there's no one doubting poor choice at all as Galway supporters or anything, but there is a lot of supporters probably saying, is poor choice going to have the energy to go again for a seventh season? What do you think is going to happen?
Honestly, I have no idea. I don't know the man. I'm not in Galway. There's no two ways about it. I mean, even club, I'll tell you, even club management now, nearly a full time. Well, if you run it to the kind of levels that the top guys run it, it nearly is slash sometimes is a full time job. A lot of energy. It depends on the lifestyle. Like I don't know how a guy could say be a school teacher now and manage a county football team, for example. I don't know what Joyce's personal circumstances are. If he worked for himself or is he a 9 to 5 or what? It's a lot of work, but look, he's after getting Mickey Graham and Dave Morris in there. I don't need to go with people with Dave Morris's caliber as a coach. I think he's kind of a legendary figure over that way for good reason. Mickey Graham had one of the best CVs in the country. Look, you'd be probably tempted with what's there. And it is unfortunate as well, I suppose, at that point where you've cooked to a certain point and there's a new game, so you've probably still got 2-3 years. As I say, as a club coach, I have the luxury of sitting back watching a season of league, a season of county. Again, I would have been of the opinion initially that short kickouts were going to be really dangerous. They're going to be getting high press. Then I was looking at some data from national. Now I'm talking all post league, the game 6 and on, where the 12v11 rule had changed. And I don't know where. I still don't know where I'm at in short kickouts. If you look at Kerry's figures, you say you have to get hands on ball. You look at Galway, you're saying, well, try and set up long set plays. You look at Tyrone there, for example, they hit a load of ones long, but got great joy off it. So if I was a manager after doing 5 years and now you're to year 6.
Well, this will be year seven if he goes for 2026.
Yeah, there's probably an itch to scratch that we're only getting to grips with the new game. Yeah, we're only getting to grips with the new game. If it was within the capacity of your lifestyle at all, I would think you would probably want a second year at least at the new rules with the study from the first year, I suppose.
What do you think is going to happen, Alan?
I'd be leaning towards I don't know, obviously, sure no one knows really.
Yeah.
Like it's very much I would say up to Porrick. I think the biggest thing you mentioned there, Stephen mentioned as well, just the energy to go and just to kind of because the amount of time and work that goes into that job. And in fairness, he's won 4 Connachts. They've dominated that. They've been in 2 All-Irelands. They've been very close, and they're still very close. By the way, they're still very close. There's obviously more teams now that are at the table as potential options. But like that, I think I saw there. Was it 8? This is their 8th championship match, Paul. Is that correct?
Would have
This
had
year.
three in Connacht, three in the group. Yeah, then would have obviously had Down and Meath. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Eight
so 8 matches,
Yeah.
like 8 championship matches, like, and you're out of the quarterfinal. Like, it's a serious road now to go all the way, and maybe there might be a round less, I believe, next year, with the new way that they're going to change it up. But I do think, it isn't easy in fairness, and Armagh maybe if seeing the other side of it as well last weekend. You do so much work on the way you're going to play and how you're going to work towards with the rules that are at your disposal, and all of a sudden the rules change, and the 2 teams that were in the All-Ireland final are out in the quarterfinal. I think there is something in that. I think it's all about the energy that he has. Can he keep the like what is the position with all the people that are with him? Because I don't think it should be taken as a given that everyone is able to give all of that time. Just as a matter of fact, because it's a huge it's a huge amount of time, and then I suppose he'll have a look in terms of and chat to the players and see are they all ready to to go at it. It's easy to say it. It's easy to say they are, but can they give all the time and go over again? Because at this point for that group, they're looking to go all the way, like and so they're because they're at that stage in their development. And then finally, I suppose he's going to be trying to he'll probably ask himself, is there players that he can reinvigorate, number one, or number two, that could be brought into the squad um to add something to it. Now, by the way, in relation to that, Paul, I think by and large, I think he has everyone in there.
Yeah.
And bringing in, say, a young fella that's coming out of under 20 or something, the days of a guy coming into a senior team making a massive impact from under 20, like young Thompson was outstanding this year. But he's an exception to the rule, really, and there will be cases like that. But you know, it would bring me to a point in relation to um, development of players and the pathway of players from underage to senior, because ultimately the senior manager is totally reliant on what kind of a conveyor belt is coming through. Totally reliant.
Yeah, I think even the big one, people are going to speculate about players, and we're not going to discuss here what players would retire or what won't, because it's
What?
obviously not our decision to do that. But the big one here is obviously Paul Conroy decided at the end of last year that he was going to come back for another year, so he's obviously the big one to decide whether he'll go again or not. Just on that, Alan, it's a point you mentioned there. If you look at the underage system at the minute, it hasn't been a good few years if you're looking at it overall. 17s and 20s, we haven't been as probably competitive as we like and competing for silverware as you would like. But even, I know you were saying earlier on, if you take this back to schools, even we haven't been competitive at those levels either.
Yeah. I would say that um, just just from an overall point of view, I suppose people can point to say to the All Ireland minor team of 22 there, right? And that was a fabulous win there for Alan Glynn and that group. Um, but like it's 7 years, like the whole dynamic in the schools. I have fascination with the school side of it, and what I mean by that is, you have all kids from essentially 13 to 19, and you have a huge cluster of kids, um young students or slash footballers that are all going to these schools. There are all these pockets, right? That you have potentially at your disposal, and the things have changed a lot since I was in school. Where like at that time there was St. Pat's and Tuam, Jarlath's, St. Mary's, for instance. There was no Clare Galway at the time, um, and there seemed there was a huge I suppose competitive nature between those schools in terms of winning Connacht colleges titles. Now, to me, getting that link between club, um, the secondary schools, and the county, I think that can be improved. And if you look at it at the moment, there is two two schools in Galway that are in Connacht, Jarrett's and Clare Galway. Um, this is not a slight on anyone, by the way. This is like there's a lot of teachers, and there's a lot of development coaches in the county that are doing a huge amount of work. But I think it's an area like when you look at Derry, and I know Stephen obviously is doing a lot of work in Derry, in Lavey and Derry, and has done a lot of work in different counties, so he'll have a good insight in this as well. But ultimately, I keep going back to that thing. It's about the conveyor belt. Like if you're over a senior team, it's the same if you're over a 20 team, or if you're over a minor team, you're working with the players at your disposal essentially. Um, and so if that conveyor belt can be improved and got better, and those links and how those players can be developed can be improved, I think you're on a right on a better road. There's two teams or two schools in Galway that are playing Connacht Day. There's four in Mayo. Okay. There was a time where you also had St. Mary's. There is a huge amount of strong clubs with big numbers in Galway City and beyond Galway City. Um, and I think there has to be, and there should be, schools there that are able to compete, and that would obviously help the production line in terms of players that could potentially play county football. Um, and if you look at the model that Derry and Tyrone have, they've a lot of coaches that are assisting the teachers and the coaches that are in the schools, and developing that and the links between the schools and the county, that they actually work in tandem rather than working against each other. Because sometimes I feel, you know, even in terms of S&C programs, training on the pitch, that they're both are doing it in silo. They're doing it separately, which obviously, if those brains are put together, it's going to be a far better product. A far better player is going to come out of it. So that's just something I just feel that can be improved. And obviously that would transmit, and that takes time, by the way. But there's no question that when you look at the any county underage manager that has come up against the Ulster teams over the last few years, and you'll be talking to different guys that have played challenge games early in the year or played even championship, but certainly early in the year when there's a lot of traveling and playing teams, and they get a good insight into the links between the school and the colleges. The school, the colleges, and the inter-county teams, and they will give you the feedback on how well that's working for them. And there you're seeing the quality. Like Tyrone have won 3 out of the last 4 under 20s. Derry, the production line, Stephen will give you good feedback on that, I'm sure. The production line and the quality of players. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Galway can if you watch, like, Galway are performing at a really high level. And I think it can be improved. The dynamic
But
has
it's to
changed. The
sustain that as
dynamic.
well.
Sorry, Paul?
It's to sustain that, like,
Well, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Galway, the dynamic has changed, Paul, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. Like, there was no Clare Galway. Children now coming out of primary school are more inclined to go to the secondary school that's closest to them. And so the numbers will say, and the draw that would have been into Jarlath's is not maybe as big as it was. But if you look at the clubs that are feeding into the likes of into St. Jarlath's, are feeding into Clare Galway, are feeding into the secondary schools in Galway City. Like, you're talking about serious, clubs that are doing serious work. Now, my feeling on it is, imagine if that could be added to, where there's more support given to the schools. The schools are accepting of that support. There's a way to kind of align both the intercounty and the schools together. That can only improve it. That can only improve the I suppose the link between, as I say, the club and the school, and then the player that's going to come out that will play for the intercounty team.
Yeah, it's funny you say couple of things that now. The first thing I say is I wouldn't have been able to tell you where Maherad was on the map of Derry 14 months ago. I could drive to blindfolded now. But the 2 or 3 things that was, firstly, that the Donegal boys recognise this, and they've got 2 combined schools now going into the Ulster Schools Championships, and one of them knocked out over CBS this year. I think that was Donegal South. They recognise, and again, as you say, I suppose whether you can do so. I only made a comparison with North Galway. I always said I thought North Galway was maybe outside of Kerry the maddest football region in the country, but South Derry certainly competes with it if doesn't go one step more. But I suppose two points on that. Like you look at Mahara, like 2/3 of the starting Derry senior team are from within 20 minutes drive of it. You know, you've Mahara Felt. So you two schools there, Mahara Felt, Mahara. I would imagine 2/3 or more of any given Derry minor or senior team, Derry under 20 senior team have have gone to school there. You know, you have Mahara Felt, the Loop, Lavey, Glen, Sloughneel, Swatra are all within, like, I think they're all within a parish Corofin size. They have obviously a bigger population than that. So these lads are organically going to those schools. But, you know, Chrissy McKaig is in with Pat Maharan. I was busy. I was like, what will I do? I was watching the first 10 minutes of the schools final, and like within 3 minutes, I was like, I see Sloughneel.
Yeah.
And it was only after someone said, oh, yo, Chrissy McKay's coach says that makes sense because they look like Sloughneel. And after 10 minutes, I said I was busy. I was between that and doing a bit of work. There's only one thing happened in this game because the other boys were still kicking the ball from end to end, and the Maharan boys were just Sloughneel. It was just so efficient and so structured. And notably, I would have said, and kind of Armagh creeping up, there's one or two new high-end players every year. They creep up, they won the All-Ireland. I mean, in terms of the raw ability, Derry have had a bad year. There's one or two high-end players coming out every year. James Sargent, there's Lavey, he does Cruciate this year. Like, he's meant to be the best under 20 footballer in the country. I'm told. I haven't seen him play yet. And I suppose just it was interesting. One of the older late 20s in the Lavey senior team 2 weeks ago, and you know they were in the county final in 18 and haven't been in one since. And he said, he says, like, the standard of the current team 2015 compared to 2018, I said, there's just raw ability, there's no comparison. But he said the other things were all the same. Like, we're fifth odds for the championship with the bookies. So based on that, like, I would have said 2-3 years ago, I think Dublin, Kerry, Galway are the natural, like, Kerry are an outlier. Dublin has the population. Galway has a reasonable population, and there's kind of socioeconomic dynamics suiting there. Probably Cork, Kildare, Meath, and the laws of averages should probably be in there as the top 6 of the laws of averages. The schools there. And what's notable is, and I stand to be corrected, but it's understood, as you say, Alan, they're not fighting with each other. They play colleges football until it's finished, and it's understood they're in savage teams. They're in with proper coaches.
Yeah.
They're playing proper competitive football. And these boys might go back into a Derry or Tyrone setup a few weeks out from under 20s. And it's understood, they're going to, the SSC will be right. They'll have had good training, put the game plan together, will be grand. Whereas I don't think that's the way generally nationally. So
well, I think in a lot of counties, to be honest, Stephen, that's it. That's one of the problems. They're working against each other. And you know, like, I think you have to kind of look at what is working in other counties. And you know, when you see it, and this works all the way down to you know, first year juvenile, you know, and you know, in fairness, like, a lot of these, I know for a fact, like, a lot of these schools, you know, Jarlath's, Clare Galway, great guys involved, and they're doing, for instance, S&C, they're doing their pitch work. But I think it's a case of kind of both sides, and it's not both sides. We're all in this together in many ways, because everyone at the end of the day is trying to develop players and improve players, and that they actually work in tandem, and I think it's a both sides then, like the acceptance of the help and the offering of the help, because, like, I say, you just think about it, like, all of these players are going to one place. It just makes so much sense that you would actually try and coordinate it while they're there. It's just an obvious fit. And I think a lot of the teams in the counties in the north that have done this, they're just ahead of the curve. Just what I see it. The players that they're producing. And the easy thing to say is here, by the way, the easy thing to say on this is, well, I don't see them winning too many senior All-Irelands. Okay. But I think that's a little bit, silly in many ways, because ultimately, you know, if you keep doing the right thing, eventually, you know, it'll come good in the end, you know, but it might take a little bit longer. But if you know, I just think just the players, and Stephen, you've seen it maybe a bit more up close than I have, but the players that, in that category of 17 to 22, that Derry and Tyrone, for instance, and when you look back and you start filtering back and how are they doing this, a lot of it comes back to the link between club, school, and intercounty.
Yeah, no, like there is some great points there about the school system and how it can be improved in Galway. Was it 13 years, Alan? You said was the last
Well,
age level.
yeah. So, yeah. Well, they've won one in 13 years.
One in 13 years.
Jarlath's, yeah.
Yeah.
Jarlath's
Okay.
won there with, yeah, in that one in Tuam Stadium a few years ago there. Um, And if you think of Hogan Cups, and Jarrett's and Hogan Cups go hand in hand, but it's 2002 with Mike and Meehan, so it's a long time. And I get the dynamic has changed and the numbers, and it is a bit more of a spread now within the various secondary schools. But I was still reckon that those Galway schools could be very, very competitive. Um, and maybe it's something just that could be looked at. It's a little bit of it's a bit off topic in some ways, Paul, but I do think sometimes the easy thing in these conversations is just to be talking simply about the senior, and ultimately the senior manager, there's a group of senior players, and they're going to go at it. They'll make tweaks and they'll improve it and so on and so on. But if that conveyor belt is not, the quality is not as strong maybe as it was, or it starts to dip, or whatever it is, or on the converse, it's improving, and this serious quality comes coming through. Well, then you're on the right road then.
Stephen, just a nice handy question for you here that has come in from a listener. And as the outsider, we'll give it to you because you're probably in
Good man,
best
Paul.
place to answer it of all of us. It's from Brian Cosgrove, a listener. Any obvious candidates to report Porrick Joyce if he was to leave his job?
Honestly, I wouldn't go down that road. I mean, as long as it's part of choice of job, I wouldn't care to speculate. And I actually haven't thought about it, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, like it's part of choice of job. I wouldn't speculate on that beyond that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that was just one that came in for a listener, and I think we're right to not to speculate it because it's Porrick Joyce's job. He's sitting in it at the minute, and until Antonis changes,
A,
won't be able to
a
give
key
it.
caveat, sorry to go back again, for all we're talking, the second most statistically significant forward in the country is chronically injured as well, just in terms of, you talk about the poll against it.
Yeah, and look how fit he looked at the
I'd
weekend.
rather be a lucky general. Conor
Yeah.
Callaghan's the most statistically significant forward there in the country, closely followed by Damien Comer. And the league game with Dublin changed instantly when he came on. The Meath game changed instantly when he came on. It's obviously for him personally, it must be heartbreaking.
Mhm.
From a Galway point of view, it's just, he's probably worth 5 years of good work in the schools there. And if he could just be kept on the field for 70 minutes, or even for the 70 minutes at the both end of the
Yeah.
season, it's an incredible loss. Not to mention Ian Burke. I don't know where he's at. Is he ever going to come home? But you do have two of the most significant five forwards in the country since 2 years ago. One is gone, one has played a very limited amount. Just that's a slight side note there. Going back, and it was Paul Joyce.
Yeah.
You'd be asking, is there a chance of getting Damien Comer for not even a full season, for a second half of the season? It's hard. It's
Well,
like
I
taking
think,
Messi out
Paul,
of
I think,
Argentina.
yeah,
He's
it's
just
a
so
great
good.
point. It's a great point, Stephen, because like the impact that he made, he's just like he came in and sure he's phenomenal, like, and absolutely like the one thing I love about Damien, like the bravery, like he just throws his body on the line, and obviously has super skills as well, by the way. But like that's what they need at that point, and he actually brought that energy to it. Um, I would encourage him. I would be encouraging him to stick with it. And it's amazing, like in these things, like how things can turn. You know what I mean? And like, because in fairness to the man, and obviously I know him very well, but like, he's had a very tough time, like with injuries, and it always seems to Paul to have happened just at the wrong time. You know, he was just coming, and next thing I'm just led to believe that it was kind of in the last training session. You know, this kind of stuff, just difficult. Because I'm sure that, like, you think of the S&C, the medical guys there, they've got great guys involved. You know, that would have been a deload session. It would have been, you know, low intensity. Um, it's
Yeah.
not like freak stuff, you know. So, but then you see him coming in and what he does. I'd love to see him like just get the, you know, just give it another bit of time and not make any kind of rash decision, because I've no doubt, like, 'cause he's so competitive that, you know, he'll be down now that he wasn't able to kind of contribute more. But he's still, you know, he's still a young man. If you think about it, he's
Yeah.
still a young man, and
Yeah. I mean,
he can still offer a lot.
just for a quick bit of statistical, there, you know, when you think of the context of Philly McMahon kept Aidan O'Shea scoreless, it was 1 or 2 all in the final. The
Yeah.
infamous thing that Gooch Cooper kept Philly McMahon to 1 point the day that Gooch scored nothing, and Philly McMahon went up
Yeah.
in 2 games. 18 in the National League final. Comer scored 3 and was fouled for 3, sort of 14, 21 yard free. 6 points on Philly McMahon, who had kept Gooch Cooper scoreless. Anna scored a point. In the All-Ireland semi-final, he scored a goal, he scored a point. He was fouled for a missed penalty and a missed kind of 27, 30 yard free. Essentially, he should have been worth 2-2 both times on Philly McMahon. I just don't think his value can be underestimated. You know, and it's a horrendous. Like, you have to expect, you know, they're probably 6 points better off every game with him in the team.
Yeah.
He's just a
Yeah.
phenomenal talent. He's such explosive pace. He's such a smart player. It's you know, if I'm a manager there, you know, I'm thinking, well, I'm missing my standout. I mean, Paul Connor's a standout technical player and one of the key players has been, but like Comer is just, it must be incredibly frustrating to be losing championship quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Comer's only able to play 20 odd minutes, you know.
Just finally, Alan, before we finish, I think it's just another prime example of why it's so important to keep as many of these players as we can for 2026.
Oh, 100%. And in the, you know, there's sometimes there's an element of like reactionary chat, you know, when things don't go well, or we, you know, teams lose, and it's probably same in any sport maybe, but in the modern age, social media and all this kind of stuff. But like, um these players these players are given so much, but also they're the best players in the county. Like, that's the reality, and I think everyone knows that. Like, you know, they're the so when you lose a player, you have to go and replace that player. Like, so even if a guy might be, maybe he hasn't got a huge amount of game time or he's down the list a bit, he's still in the top 30, let's say, in Galway as a, you know, a senior footballer. He's put in the amount of work. There's been a lot of work invested in that player, maybe for 3, 4, maybe a lot longer than that, years. You think of S&C, physical fitness, nutrition, game intelligence, and so on and so on. Um, so when you bring in, when that player steps away or whatever it is, and that player has to be replaced, now you have to recharge that new player with all of this information. You have to give that player time to understand the game, to get physically developed and so on. So, uh, you know, it's never a good thing when a player steps away. And you know, yes, players sometimes get to a point where they just feel that they've given enough, or maybe they're not getting enough from it, or so on. But I always go back to that thing that when you lose one, you know, now you have to go and replace them, and it's never as easy, you know. And I don't think, I think generally, Paul, and I've been seeing your thoughts, but even from feedback that you get online, but I think generally people are kind of would feel that all the best players are in there. So that kind of says it all, really. As if any of these guys go, you know, they're going to have to be replaced probably by a new guy, and that player will have to be given a lot of time to get up to the level. They're Division One, they're an All Ireland contender. That's a high level of intercounty team to be going into.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I don't think there's one player any supporter could be screaming at here that's not in there that should be in there. Maybe that might change as club championship goes on, but
Exactly, and if it does, that's good. That's great.
yeah,
That'd be fantastic.
yeah. But just before we do finish up on the podcast, a big thank you to the Galway senior football team and the management for all the efforts all year. Unfortunately, this year it didn't work out, but they gave us some great days. Particularly if you look back to Castlebar and throughout that group of death and even the down game. But just unfortunate at the weekend. But that's all we do have time for on today's show. Thanks to Alan and Stephen for coming on.